We are well under 1 week away from the Jets kicking off their season on Monday Night Football, and plenty to talk about tonight. Where is Hassan Reddick? Will he be at practice tomorrow? Michael Carter gets an extension. We're going to do some predictions, and we're going to talk about Jets-Niners. We have an actual football game to preview. Myself and Dylan Terriman, JetNation Radio, JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com, where you can join the most active Jets message board on the web. Dylan, how we doing?
Dude, I'm doing so good. I mean, we're finally here. I mean, we're previewing a game at the end of this show. So, now we're actually into it. But at first, I do want to say this is a 2-year anniversary for Jet Nation Live. This is 2 years, not to the exact day, but to the week where you and I started going live on YouTube. So I appreciate anybody who's been here for that long, putting up with our faces for the last 2 years throughout all the losses. But I don't know, man. I feel good. I got the background back. I feel good about this season, man. I'm so excited for this one.
Listen, if you can't get excited about this season, and I've said before, man, I've been through it. Again, I started watching this team in '87. I've seen enough stuff that I promised myself that I would stop getting excited about seasons because it's always one letdown after another. And what do the Jets do? They go out and build what is arguably the best roster I've ever seen as a fan. To which my response is, how could I not get excited? How could I not, again, even, as much as I, preferred Bowers in the draft, I do like the idea of a Fashanu behind Smith in case there's an injury. Look, health, we've been over it a million times. That's going to be a question. But if enough guys stay healthy, the sky is the limit for this team. I can't wait to get going. Let's start with Reddick. We all saw yesterday tweets that he was at an event signing Jets merch, that the Jets had just cleared $8 million in cap space. He was only a half an hour away from the facility. This must mean the holdout is over. And I felt great about it, though. I felt so optimistic. I was in a really good mood. And these tweets were mostly from Connor Hughes. Then you see some follow-up tweets from Connor Hughes. Well, he wasn't there to sign Jets merch. Some people just showed up with Jets merch. So it wasn't really that aspect of it wasn't necessarily true. And then you get the fact that, yes, the Jets freed up $8 million in cap space. And I'm not saying this is the case, but we've talked about before, teams do generally like to free up some space before the year starts if they're up against it because they like to have a little room. Basically, I went from being 100% sure he was going to be there tomorrow to being about 80% sure, which is not nothing. But to me, my confidence in it dropped a little bit. I think it was, and I don't know if you saw this, Dylan, when Connor Hughes asked Hassan Reddick if he was willing to sit out the whole season. Hassan Reddick couldn't have gotten out of there fast enough. He wanted nothing to do with talking to anyone. Look, if you just signed a new deal, I don't expect him to answer the question, but maybe a nod, maybe a smile, no comment, thanks for coming out, something. Reddick was like, get me the hell away from these people. So I was like, I'm not feeling so great about this now.
Yeah, the whole interaction at that charity event seemed very awkward and forced. And I understand the beat writers have a job to do, and Hassan Reddick has an obligation that he, obviously committed to. So good for him for doing the charity event. Some fan did bring up the Jets helmet to him to sign. And the one picture that was taken and posted on socials that I saw, he was looking down at the Jets helmet like, oh man, I might never put this on. And I'm not saying that that's what is going to happen, but he was wearing green shoes and a green hat. So whether that's the Eagles or the Jets, he's obviously showing some kind of colors to show some kind of sign of something. And I don't know. My prediction was always that he was going to come this week, sign, and then not play till the Patriots game. The only thing that hasn't come true is that he hasn't reported before we went live to do the show. I said he would by the time we did our next show. But other than that, I mean, he still has a chance to sign and then not play anyway. So at this point, they're obviously starting game prep tomorrow. They didn't have practice. So if Hassan's there, I mean, maybe he'll be game planned in for 7 to 10 snaps. But other than that, it's all systems go toward 49ers without Hassan going with them.
Yeah, I think that's the unfortunate piece of this is that of all the games, their first 2 months, really, you could argue this is the game where they need him most. I feel like they can win without him in the 4, 5, 6 games that follow. Not having him against San Fran makes it a little tougher, obviously, especially its first game of the year. You look at a guy like Will McDonald, who I expect big things from this year. I don't expect him to do anything against Trent Williams. I don't expect anyone to do anything against Trent Williams. I don't care if Trent Williams missed all of camp. He's a million-year veteran who's been to a million Pro Bowls and All Pros and all that. So I sort of look at that side of the line. That's almost, I look at it like you looked at receivers when they went against Revis. Like, don't expect anything out of anyone lining up on that side, or at least anyone going head-to-head with Trent Williams. So this is the game where you really could use Reddick. Saleh didn't rule out the fact he might play if he does come on board, but as you just said, and I talked about several weeks ago, you're now at a point where you have to worry about him pushing too hard and hurting himself. So as you said, is he on the field for 7 snaps, 10, 12, 15? Just situational third and long, just third and long late in the game where you need him most? Like, how do you deploy him if he shows up? We'll have to wait and see. Hopefully we find out. But as I said, I'm not 100% sold on the fact that he is going to be coming in. I'm confident. I just have a hard time. Here's where I struggle. That this is about money, and the losing of real money is about to start. How much he's lost up to this point, to be honest, I've seen like 7 different numbers thrown around.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that he's lost $2 million. I've seen that he's lost $5 million. That's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
When you're due to make $15 million, $5 million is 33% of your yearly damn salary. That's huge. But if he's that too, maybe he can afford another $1 million, whatever it may be. But it's like I said, I don't have all the warm and fuzzies. He seemed like he wanted nothing to do with being spoken to yesterday about his situation with the Jets. Real quick in the chat, somebody asked, who do we think the starting receivers are? We'll do the game preview later, but I think it's going to be Williams only just started practicing with the team recently, so I think it'll be a little bit of him, a little bit of Lazard. Dano's in the room. How we doing, Dano? Brian, my info. Thanks for hopping on, guys. So, yeah, Lazard, basically where I am is in the back of my mind, or I said this yesterday, Dylan, and I said this to Gus, going back and forth on Twitter. Gus Doon, our good friend over here. My heart says I'm not so sure, but my head says he's going to be here. Like,
Mm-hmm.
This is about money, and you're about to start losing $850,000 for every week you don't show up. If he doesn't come in, I think he's look, do what you want with your life, but I'd be shopping for a new agent. If I wanted more money and I'm about to start losing nearly $1 million a week, I need some new advisors.
Yeah, and I know that Tory Dandy just had his client, Patrick Surtain, just break the market for cornerback. So I even tweeted it out. I was like kind of just hopeful. I'm like, oh, is Dandy going to get 2 $20 million players today? Like, is Reddick going to report? And maybe it's not even going to be that high. And my info asked in the chat, do you trade him if he doesn't play? No, I don't trade him at this point. You're not going to get back what you traded for him. Like at most you're going to get back a 4th or a 5th, and it's probably a future 4th or a 5th. I mean, he went for a conditional future 3rd already. So that's kind of, telling that his market wasn't really there, or else he'd be on a team that wanted to give him a contract, quite frankly. So like, that's the other part of this too, is somebody wants to trade for him he's already upset, and then they know they have to pay him too. So, and I get it from his perspective. He doesn't want to prove himself again, but it's tough. So I wouldn't trade him, no. And it just seems like we're not going to have him at this point for the 49ers.
Yeah, and a few things also to touch on. I think we've mentioned previously, but worth mentioning again. I think, it was reported that every team that called and inquired about a trade hung up on the Eagles because the Eagles were up front. And they said he wants a new deal, and this is how much he wants. The number is reportedly in the $28 million range, and everyone hung up the phone. Nobody else wanted him. So the Jets were the only team. Why would a team now listen, if a team loses a pass rusher week 1, maybe that changes the landscape a little. But as long as and really, how many teams have the cap space to add him and give him $25 million? I don't know how many teams could even work that. So I don't see a trade happening. I don't think the Jets want to trade him. I think they feel like he's got to show up eventually, but then you get into, when does he show up? Does he show up week 2? Does he show up week 11? And how does he play? And that's the other question, Dylan, actually, that I wanted to touch on, and we'll move on from Reddick in a second. But when you look at how little he produced down the stretch last year, 0 sacks in his final 5 games, do you think even he's kind of thinking, if I have lost a half a step, I don't need to go in and let the Jets see that, because then I'm not getting my money. I need my money now in case I'm not the guy I was, because I didn't do anything in the back half of the year last year.
I'd probably have to go back and watch those games to see like just how much of an impact he made without actually gaining a statistical stat. I was listening to Nick Faria earlier today, one of the beat reporters for the Jets, and he said that there's about 50% of the plays last year that Hassan Reddick contributed or was a result of in like a positive way for that defense. Obviously, he's an Eagles fan as well. So like his fandom doesn't lie with the Jets, it's with the Eagles. So he's seen Hassan before coming to the Jets. And if he says that, I mean, I think it's pretty true. So I'd have to go back and see it. But I mean, anytime you don't have sacks tallying up in the December, January months, it's really tough to state your case. And like I said, I know he's kind of had to prove it his whole entire career. And I also understand the Jets' standpoint of like, we will gamble with what we have, but also we understand your value, but we're not going to set a precedent for you when we have other people that we want to pay.
All right. So that's that. We'll move on from Reddick because he's been such a key talking point in recent weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But whether or not he comes in, we'll see. The other piece of news yesterday that I figured we touch on, of course, Michael Carter, Nickelback, gets a 3-year extension worth up to $33 million with $19 million guaranteed. Thoughts on that, Dylan?
I mean, I'm not blaming you for making the title, but it should say earns 3-year extension because boy, that dude is special. I mean, as far as slot corner play, they made an entire AP slot for it in terms of what the hell is it called now? They made an award for it for the slot corner for the All Pro. Jesus, AP, not All Pro. So yeah, they made an All Pro slot cornerback. I think Michael Carter is deserving of it. He's in the top 3, top 5, arguably. I mean, no question about it. I mean, so good for him. He deserves to be the highest paid. I feel like by the time the extension kicks in, somebody will get paid and it'll be higher than his, and it'll only make the value look better than it is. So I'm just happy to have the first, it's kind of sad to say, the first Joe Douglas multi-year extension. Ashton Davis was the first one, but it's only a 1-year deal. So good for Michael Carter, the second best Joe Douglas value pick in the 5th round. Obviously, he's had good quality picks, but Michael Carter might be his easily his best value pick.
Yeah, I think bang for buck, he's number 1 right now. But it had to happen. It's always best to get these guys done while they're still on the roster before free agency hits. Because that's when the bidding starts and the crazy money gets thrown around. You get Carter locked up now, and you're in a good spot with him. Now all you got to do is open up the checkbook and give Sauce about $30 million next year.
Yeah.
Market's at 25 now, and if he does some things this year, which we can discuss, Dylan, in our predictions, bold predictions, regular predictions, season records, we'll just throw some things out there. Let's go ahead and kick it off, Dylan, with the Jets record. Start at the thing everyone is thinking most about. How many games do they win this year? And again, this is assuming no catastrophic injuries. Where do you see this team, finishing up in terms of wins and losses?
So if I was just being honest and like truly objective looking at the schedule, I'd say anywhere from 10 to 11 wins. The math would probably lay somewhere in the middle. So I'll go with 10 to be safe. I think 10 is very achievable. I think the difference between a 10 and an 11 win team in the NFL is there's a big gap. And I know it sounds silly, but there is. But if we're going bold and maybe a little bit more fandom with the green glasses on, I would say 12 wins. Like you can find 12 wins on this schedule and not really be like, okay, but like we're taking a loss from this team who probably deserves to beat us. No, like there's probably like 5 losses, true, like, okay, I really don't feel good about these games that on the schedule. And that doesn't mean they're losses, but just like in your gut, you immediately just like think loss, maybe 5 of them on the schedule. So I'd say 12 if we're going bold.
I'm going a little bit bolder. 13.
Oh, let's go.
13-4. Look, if you haven't seen the numbers, it's been discussed several times. We talked about it a little bit the other day on Jake Assman's show. Aaron Rodgers over the past, 5, 6, 7, maybe it might even be for his career. But when his team allows 20 points or fewer, what is he, 80-5 or 80-9 or some ridiculous number?
Yeah,
over the last few years, he's like 35-2.
Yep.
when his team gives up. Now, listen, this Jets defense, we know how good they can be. We know how good they've been. Just imagine them playing knowing that how they play is going to matter. In the past, it's, well, if we don't get a shutout, we're probably going to lose this game. Like, oh, damn, we gave up 10. That's it. Game
we
over.
have to score.
Now you can play a little bit loose and take a couple more risks because you know what? We're probably going to score 24 today. We're probably going to score 30 today. We don't have to be so conservative. And when we get leads, we're going to get after the quarterback. So I think this team, again, and you know, I heard someone, well, I've heard people say this many times. I've heard people say Aaron Rodgers is 3 years removed from his MVP season. It's been 3 years since we've seen him play quality football. And I think to myself, this year hasn't started yet. Like actual number of months, it ain't 3 years ago that he was last on the field playing well.
2020, yeah, I was going to say 2021.
And you can talk to me, well, that's, you know, you got the MVP years, but even 2 years ago.
2022, he played fine.
He was bad for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, exactly.
But he was playing with a broken thumb and rookie receivers. Oh, can you believe his numbers dipped a little bit? He was playing with rookies and he had, you know, he's had boxing gloves on while he was throwing the football. Like, of course his numbers dipped. So, no, it's not 3 years since we've seen him play well. He played well 2 years ago with a bunch of rookies. And even the playoff game, and really this is sort of a theme. You look back at all the recent playoff losses that he's had. There was always like a weird fluky like drops in key spots, special teams miscues in key spots. Like you can't look at this and go, oh, look, Aaron Rodgers can't perform in the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers is fine. His defense gives up 33 points a game in the playoffs.
Can you guess how many points total were scored in Aaron Rodgers' first playoff appearance? How many points total were scored?
In his first playoff, what now?
In his first playoff appearance. It was like 2012 against Arizona.
I should know because I just read the book and it talked about all of his playoff games, but I forget.
The final score was like 51-45.
Yeah.
And he lost because he got pressure up the middle, strip sack, the ball kicked up. It was a penalty right into Carlos Dansby's hands, and he ran it in for a touchdown.
But that's an excuse, Dylan. The truth is he sucked.
51-45.
No, you either suck or you don't. If you lose, that's excuses.
I don't care if he lost
97-92. He choked in a big spot.
Yeah, his stat line was probably ridiculous in that game anyway.
I'm sure it was, but I'm fed up with it. It's the same thing. I saw this today on the forums at JetNation. And you get these people who, they're still complaining about Ryan Khalil. Like they hate Joe Douglas so much they can't look forward. It's got to be like, let's bash him for every move in the past. And the number of people would say, this guy's been the GM for 6 years. Year 6 hasn't started yet. That makes it 5, let's be honest. And he took the job after the offseason. He's had 4 off seasons. And last year, his season ended on the 4th play because Aaron. So now let's fire Joe Douglas because the turf at MetLife. Like that's how ridiculous. There were people, like not just Jets fans, not just homers. There were people picking the Jets to go to the Super Bowl last year, which truly would have been Joe Douglas's 4th year of building the team. And again, the Rodgers injury happens. And now we get to this year, and people are already counting this season against him before they've kicked off for game 1. Oh, 6 years, and look at his no playoffs. And dude, for everyone who says that, go look at Ozzie Newsome's record when he started. Every one of these people would have fired Ozzie Newsome before he started winning Super Bowls. Because we don't need context. Let's not look at the roster. Let's not look at why they're bad. If you're bad because your talent sucks, fine, fire the guy. But are you going to tell me the talent on this roster isn't phenomenal? No, it's ridiculous, but this is what we get. Like, you hate Joe Douglas, so you say he's been around for 6 years, even though truly he's had 4 off seasons, plus this one going into this year, hasn't been played yet. And then the people that just hate Aaron Rodgers are like, oh, he hasn't been good in 3 years. No, he was good. That was 2 NFL seasons ago, and he was very good. Like that year he had a couple years ago, but he's one of the best in Jets history.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you can go from being one of the worst teams to one of the best teams, even if it is just on paper, through the course of 2 off seasons since they've acquired Aaron Rodgers. I mean, there was a time where they were starting, the youngest roster in the NFL. and we had all this faith in Joe Douglas, and we were like, we're going to sit here and we're going to trust the process, and we believe in what he's going to do. And somehow, some way, like we just kind of like gave up on him a little bit, because I feel like for the roster we have now, considering what we came from, there's not many teams that have done this in a 4-year span, in my opinion. I mean, there's some rosters that have really turned around, like if you've drafted and hit on a quarterback. But think about this roster if we didn't have to trade for Aaron Rodgers and any of the quarterbacks, Sam or Zach, was a hit for Joe Douglas. Like, it is what it is, but like that depreciated some of the assets the Jets could use. So even still, I think he's done a phenomenal job. I'm not going to say, let's make a statue for him, but the roster that he has, I mean, I turned 30 at the end of the football season, and there's no team better than what I see right now going into a season for sure.
Yeah, we don't have to go over the roster, and we know where. What was it the other day? CBS or somebody did, sort of not. I don't know if they were predicting guys that would make All Pro or just saying guys would play at an All Pro level. They listed 5 Jets, and it didn't include Tyron Smith, who we all know,
Yeah,
if
exactly.
he's healthy, plays at an All Pro level.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason that the superstars on this roster shouldn't play at the very least a Pro Bowl level. But listen, Garrett's playing at an All Pro level this year. Brees, I can't imagine being a fan of this team and looking at the talent and being like, I can't wait till we fire Joe Douglas.
Right.
It's like, all right, man, let's bring Brooks Bollinger back. You probably don't remember who that is, Dylan.
Yes, I do. I remember Bollinger. I was very young for Bollinger, but I remember. That actually brings me perfectly into my next prediction, talking about all pros. Yep. I did have written down that I think the Jets have 4 starting Pro Bowlers, not alternates, but starters. I know there's a difference in terms of contracts if you're an actual all Pro Bowler or not, excuse me, and at least 2 first-team All Pros. So whether that's 2 on offense, 2 on defense, and I even made a list of guys that I think are like eligible. And like you said, the list is fairly long. You said 5 in that article. I mean, Quinnen, Sauce, Quincy, Michael Carter, those guys could all be All Pros. Jermaine, Hassan, if he played a full season, could definitely be All Pro. And then on offense, Rodgers, Brees, Garrett, Tyron Smith, AVT, he could be a Pro Bowler. Tippmann could be a Pro Bowler too. So like those are like 10 names, 12 names off the rip that like the Jets could dominate the Pro Bowl. Actually, they could have a lot of representation. So I'm not like I don't know. I'm usually not like one to care about it, and I don't like vote out the wazoo like everybody else does. And good for you guys because they need all the votes they can get. I vote a couple times for the guys I like, but it's very possible to have 4 Pro Bowlers and 2 first team All Pros on this team.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And what is it? It's not Arthur. Otter says, remember before you get the wheels ahead of the cart, 2021 Jets played historically bad NFC
No,
teams.
Packers played.
Jets D better be the best in the AFC. Well, it can be. Yeah. I mean, it's a passing league, right? And this is why I'm so high on the Jets when they make it to the postseason, is because the number of times I've watched especially the last few years, you watch the postseason, these teams, the number of big pass plays they make to either come back in a big spot late in the game. I watch and I feel like the Jets secondary could prevent all these big chunk plays that we see to these top receivers down the field that get teams back into football games. And God forbid the Jets ever get in a game where they have a lead and teams have to throw. They just haven't had that. They haven't had that luxury over the past few years. They've managed to win 7 games with bottom 2 quarterback play. Really, you should say bottom of the league, worst quarterback play in the NFL. They're winning 7 games. They're going from worst to Aaron Rodgers, and I got people saying they're going to win 9 games. Dylan, Aaron Rodgers is 2 games better than Zach Wilson. That's what Aaron Rodgers adds. He makes you 2 games better. Maybe 1.5. Maybe one. They'll have a halftime lead that they'll blow. But yeah, Zach, they're almost the same guy, really. I mean, they probably win 7 again.
I can see it. They look the same. But no, back to your point about the defense. For the longest time, I was always afraid of that shot down the sideline or whatever
Yep.
burning a DB. I mean, the only one that I remember being mad at is the one with Greg Williams and the Raiders. I think it was Henry Ruggs. I think that was the only one that I've ever been mad at the Jets getting burnt for. But yeah, that's always been the staple of the Jets is like, we're going to get cooked for like a 70-yard bomb and there's nothing we can do about it. And now for the past at least 2 seasons with Sauce and DJ, it's like the ball leaves the screen or like, the screen's trying to like catch up with it
And
on the
you feel pretty
broadcast
good about
angle.
it.
Oh, hell yeah. The my biggest fear is that like, we're not going to catch it. Like
Yeah.
it's going to hit the ground or we're not going to
Yeah,
catch it. Like, that's my biggest fear.
or a ticky-tack call gets a PI,
Sure. Yeah.
because
The holding
that's
merchant.
yeah, I don't care how good your corners are. Every time the ball goes up in the air, it's like, uh-oh, here we go. Just waiting for a ridiculous flag. Glenn, do you know the Bozo Aaron Rodgers play call story? I don't think I do. Don't think I do, Roger. So all right, so I'm gonna throw another one out here on that topic. I'm gonna say Sauce Gardner is gonna be on a mission. He's gonna get himself 5 interceptions. And he's going to finish top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year voting. I was going to say he's going to win it, but it's tough for corners, man. Somebody's going to get 18 sacks, and they're going to hand. And I mean, not that you wouldn't deserve it with 18 sacks, but and they're going to get it. But I think Sauce is going to be top 3 Defensive Player of the Year.
If he has 5 interceptions and does the next thing that I'm going to predict him to do, I don't see how he doesn't finish less than 3rd in the Defensive Player of the Year voting, because if you just look at the cover stats and just assume maybe some regression to the mean, whatever, 5 interceptions is special, especially because he has the ability, like the one against the Aaron Rodgers, actually, when it got called back on penalty, like he was ready to take it to the house. And like, those are the situations that he takes advantage of, is like stopping on a dime, cutting and turning back up the field to intercept the pass. And I think that would be, huge for him if he were to get 5. I don't know if I would predict 5. Obviously, this is a bold take, so like maybe like 2 or 3 for this season, but 5 definitely puts you in Defensive Player with a consolation prize being first team All-Pro. I'll couple that real quick into my Sauce Gardner prediction, which is that Sauce leads the NFL in fewest receiving yards allowed. On a minimum of 425 snaps last year, he finished in 2nd place with 251 yards. Jalen Johnson of the Bears allowed 195.
Wow.
But Michael Carter II quietly 3rd with 258 yards. Let's not forget, like he's a special player. And just to take a shot at any Dolphins fans that might be in the chat, Carter and Sauce both had fewer yards allowed than Jalen Ramsey, who only played in 11 games and surrendered 272. So if Sauce Gardner, even gets close to that 250-yard allowed mark, that's the Revis meme, reincarnated. Yeah. And you add 5 interceptions onto that. Yeah, you're 3rd first team All-Pro in your career, probably the first person in history to ever do that, maybe at his position, maybe on defense, maybe in the NFL. So just special. Open the checkbook, Woody. $100 million corner coming down next offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think let's see. No, I forgot what I was going to say. Lost my train of thought.
Sorry, you got lost.
No, that's fine. That's quite, no. It was about Sauce. It was about the picks. It was about. Oh, that's what I was going to say. The thing that will make it tougher, as we said earlier, probably playing with some leads this year. Teams will probably be throwing the ball a little bit more.
And you can't avoid him. It's not like you can just abuse the other side of the field, because DJ Reed will get his too. That's the thing. It's not a matter of, okay, we're just going to avoid Revis and we'll attack Cromartie and, I don't know, in the slot, Quincy Wilson, maybe. I don't know, whoever it was. But like, you can't do that either. Michael Carter's going to get his. So it's like you're going to have to throw, especially if he shadows, you're going to have to throw to your number 1 receiver. And Sauce is most likely going to be on him.
Right. Yeah. And well, that's what makes the secondary, or the level the secondary plays at, like I said, has been the reason that I'm so bullish on what I think this team can do if they get to the postseason. Obviously, they have to get to the quarterback as well, but the defense, the secondary should make that a little bit easier. And I will say this, having sort of the Reddick thing, I've kind of gone back and forth on, how bad do they need him? Was it a bad move for the Jets to trade for him without a deal in place? All that stuff I could kind of live with, or I could live with making that deal because as I've said before, how many times have we criticized Jets general managers for doing their due diligence and never getting a deal done?
Mhm.
Elite. Oh, they looked into this guy. They were interested in this player. They talked to this team about what, and like they would never get a deal. There was a running joke, like, oh, the Jets lead the league in due diligence, but they never make any trades. So Douglas made the deal. It was a gamble. Right now, it's not a good look. But I think the worst thing Douglas did in that whole scenario was giving John Franklin Myers away for nothing before you had Reddick signed. That's a 50 pressure a year guy who's not on your roster now. In exchange for it, you got like a 2046 seventh round pick that nobody cares about. So I think that was a mistake. But again, if Reddick comes in and he gets a sack in his first game, no one's going to care.
Yeah, and shout out to Buffalo Jet fan for providing this stat, and also blame him if I get it wrong, repeating it. But John Franklin Myers had 8 pressures in the first game of the season last year, and Michael Clemens had like 8 all season. I know they played a very different amount of snaps on the defense, but
Right.
I don't think Michael Clemens as a pass rusher is really
No,
he's
he's
like a
not.
net neutral at best, and I
Yeah.
feel like that's not good. So
No.
it's gonna be a tricky situation there. But yeah, the John Franco Myers thing kind of bums me out too, because it seems like if they knew this was gonna happen, obviously a lot of things would have changed. But it's funny, we're watching this in real time, and it's something you can draw back on in situations, because we will see it again with this team, and maybe not soon, and hopefully not soon, but this is the trickle effect of one position. It happens to be the defensive line, so it's technically 2 positions, but the edge position, the trickle effect of not valuing and paying Bryce Huff. That's
Well,
all it
again,
comes down to.
I don't think they were ever going to come to an agreement. I think the biggest sticking point was that they were never going to make him a
Mhm.
75-80% of the snap guy, or 80% of the snaps guy, and that's what he want. I don't even think it was about money.
Right.
I think he didn't want to be a part of a team whose philosophy is we rotate guys and keep them fresh. We
Mhm.
want guys we want guys in the fourth quarter to have their legs under them and be able to get after the quarterback. So I think money wise, even if the Jets had made that offer, but told Huff, we think the reason you're so good is because of the way we deploy you. And if we let you wear down, you're not going to be as effective. So we're going to be paying more money for less production. And Huff's take was, I want to be an every down player, which I can respect.
Mhm.
And even, I actually said this I wrote an article a couple of years ago. It was about Quinnen, but it applies to Huff too. Because last year was the first time they really played Quinnen the vast majority of snaps. They finally did it, which
Yes.
I felt they should have done from year one. And I said, if you're only playing this guy 65% of the time and he hits his ceiling, again, the article was about Quinnen, but same for Huff. Huff becomes an elite player. How do you go to the owner and say, we want you to pay a part-time player $20 million a year? He's going to play 60% of the snaps. His peers, the other guys who make that money, play 75-85% of the snaps, but we want you to pay that same premium for a guy. If I'm the owner, I'm going to be like, no, I'm not paying a guy who plays six. And they're like, well, that's our philosophy. That, again, that's part of why we think he's as good as he is, because
Mhm.
we keep him fresh. In order to keep him fresh, we got to sit him a lot, but we still have to pay him as if he plays 80% of the time. That's a tough sell to, I would think that's a tough sell to an owner.
No, no, absolutely. And I think, like you said, you're mentioning Woody, and I don't want to like harp on this because we've done this song and dance with, like, what is his involvement, but the lack of commitment to most things in this organization outside of 2024 from Woody is a little telling. Obviously, the Michael Carter deal just got done, but Woody is very concentrated on 2024, it seems, and he doesn't really care about 2025 and 2026, because the entire picture could look different if it doesn't go the way he wants. So, or the way that we all think. I
And
shouldn't say
that
the
and
way
that
he
and that
wants, but
I was thinking about that this offseason, and it's you wonder if he just kind of said, all right, look, you last year was supposed to be the year because we brought in all this talent. Rodgers got hurt, so that's going to be your mulligan. I'll give you another year, but I'm not giving you another boatload of players. Look, Tyron Smith becomes available. You get him. John Simpson, relative bargain compared to what guys are getting paid. So we'll spend a little bit, but we're not going on another spending spree because we were supposed to be good enough last year. If we get Aaron back plus a fresh crop of draft picks, that should still be enough to be good enough. So I kind of get it. If he's got if he's going to have a new GM coming in, which I think would be idiotic to move on from Douglas. I heard a great, and kind of this is along the lines of what I've been saying over the past, I guess year and a half now between Douglas and Saleh. I was watching McAfee the other day, and he had Belichick on, and I keep saying like the GM's job is get the talent. As far as I'm concerned, this is a very talented football team. Now it's up to the coach to get them ready to play. And Belichick had this quote, and I thought, yeah, that kind of applies to it applies to every team every week, but it's kind of what I've been saying. And Belichick said one of Parcells' old sayings was, the best team doesn't always win. The team that plays best wins. And that's if you've gotten Robert Saleh all this talent and they stay relatively healthy and they win 9 games, that ain't Joe Douglas's fault. Like, it's now up to the coaches to say, we've just agreed they've got, they had 5 players in the top 100. CBS Sports says they got 5 All-Pros. That's not including Tyron Smith. Like, how many the Daniel Jeremiah thing, I'm sure you saw it earlier this offseason, looked at how many teams have how many blue chip players. The Jets, I think, were tied first in the NFL.
That was a great exercise.
Like, everyone universally, whether it's Daniel Jeremiah or CBS Sports or, bandwagon, or not a bandwagon, but, green Kool-Aid Jets fans, everyone agrees there is a lot of elite talent on this roster. If you are a head coach and you have a Hall of Fame quarterback and a ton of elite talent and you win 8 or 9 games, I'm not firing the GM. I'm going to be like, you know what, GM, you keep doing what you're doing. Let's go find a coach who can make the best of it.
Yep, 100%. I think if there were one person to be fired with a less than 10-win season, it would be Saleh. Now, I don't know what Woody is completely unpredictable. He could just fire everybody and say whatever. But I do think that if that was the case and like you miss out on the playoffs by 1 game, like some of our favorite maybe podcasters have predicted us to miss the playoffs, then, maybe Saleh's gone, but I don't think Joe Douglas should be gone. There's a question here from the real CB3 about Reddick. Then we can keep going with the predictions. It says, I don't think Reddick was brought in only to play 60% of the snaps like Saleh has done in years past. He was brought in as an all-around player, which Huff wasn't, for run defense. So, okay, yes, to break it all down, I think he's definitely a better run player than Huff is. I don't know if you've seen Vic Fangio and his latest quotes about Huff not being a full-time player yet. And that has to do with, dropping into coverage and what have you, playing against the run, just things that Fangio's scheme does that we do not. But he is going to be their starter, and I think he'll be fine there. But with Reddick, I think there is some merit to the first part of this as far as the 60% of the snaps. So the trade stipulations was 70%, if I'm not mistaken, 70% of the snaps. So
I thought it was 65, but it might be 70.
Okay, so 65 or 70. So like I think either way, like the Jets were going to toe that line
right
as close as they could.
And then maybe if you're in the playoffs, you sit him and
if they absolutely need to, then they're like, all right, we'll surrender that 2nd round pick, but we're going to the Super Bowl, and that's pick 63 or 64 at the end of the day because we played Hassan an extra 10, 15 snaps, whatever. So I do think there's some merit to that, CB, that he wasn't brought in as a 60% guy, and that explains why they were able to let Huff and JFM walk, because you kind of replaced 2 for 1. If you plan on, using everybody else in a rotation and you have Quinnen and Hassan as your kind of like main players on the defensive line, obviously Jermaine would probably be a close 3rd, but then you have a real solid core and then you rotate around it. So I think there was some merit to that. And I think the Jets made that trade knowing that they wanted to use him more than the rotation that they normally do.
Yeah, I think we'll see. I can't see. My thought process was they put it at that number because that's about the range they play guys in. And as I was saying, if they're when they're sitting there at 12-2 or whatever it is, they can say, you know what, we're sitting pretty. Let's sit him for a week. And
Mhm.
now his percentage goes from 64 to a nice safe 61, and you could let him play as much as you need over the final few games if you need him to. And look, I'm not saying it won't. It could be a possibility. Part of it too, as we talked about earlier, the lack of production down the stretch. If they feel like that was a product of him wearing down a little, maybe they. I mean, look, we'll see. Let's hope we find out. Let's hope we find out what the plan is, and he
Yeah,
shows up
seriously.
to work tomorrow. Like I said, I literally, 1 minute I'm like, he is so showing up. There's no doubt about it. And
Mhm.
then I'm like, this is the Jets. They have let it get to this point. But no, he's showing up. He's showing up.
All right, you got another bold take. I think I have at least one more that's fairly bold.
I don't think it's bold, but I think we're gonna see Garrett break a bunch of records this year, a bunch of Jets records. I mean, Aaron too. They're together. They're gonna team up and break the franchise touchdown passes for Aaron, the franchise yards for Aaron, and then Garrett will set the franchise for maybe not for catches because they have so many targets, but I think for yards and touchdowns.
You think okay, yeah, I mean it's a little bold, but I do think he can flirt with Marshall's yards, but 15 is so many. Like that's I mean, the way Rodgers and Devontae had that, I'm looking at 17 no matter what type of mentality. And like he would force it to Devontae, even if Devontae was 75% covered versus a more open player. So yeah, I mean it's very that's very fair. I guess it kind of works into this one that I have here. I mentioned this to you in the pre-show. I saw it on Good Morning Football. So Peter Schrager, damn you for stealing my bold take. But I
Stole your
do think
thunder.
I think there's a chance for the Jets to do like the trifecta and dominate the NFL honors again. I know they did the whole Sauce and Garrett thing. You're gonna have to stop. My dog is crying.
I
Oh,
couldn't
we're at
tell
the
if that was
we're at,
your. My dog is
no,
always
it's
quiet
mine.
during the pod, and like the last 3 weeks, she's done it. I'm like, all of a sudden, she wants to be on the air,
She's
and
excited for the Jets,
I
man.
heard yours, and I hit my mute. I'm like, is
Yeah,
that my
no, it's
dog or Dylan's
100%
dog?
mine. It's this is what happens, we're back in the normal setup. But no, I think Aaron Rodgers could win comeback player of the year and MVP. So two awards for Aaron. Garrett or Brees could win offensive player. So we'll just stick with Garrett because you mentioned all those. And then Sauce and Quinnen could win defensive player of the year. So like we have so many opportunities to just dominate the NFL honors, but I'll let you go so I can quiet her down.
No, I don't disagree. And it's that. Listen, you could say we're being homers, but I remember saying a couple of years ago when we were doing our bold takes, um, I remember, and I remember holding up my pad to show you. I think you picked Sauce for Rookie of the Year, and I showed you. I was like, I had Sauce and Garrett. I said I don't want to pick both because that's being a homer, so I'm only
Yeah.
going to pick one. And I mean, they did. I mean, legitimately, explain to me why any of those guys couldn't win Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, look, look. You're going to have to. There's some monsters out there,
Hmm.
right? But I think the fact that this team is going to be fired up, they're going to be playing with leads. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun, man. I
No,
think it's
if
gonna be a lot
Quinnen
of
could get
fun.
like, excuse me, Quinnen could get like 12 sacks. I feel like he could be in contention. I know you said 18 for like an edge rusher. Yeah, that's pretty special. But 12 from a defensive tackle. Plus, you got to add in he's probably forcing fumbles and like tackles for loss. So I definitely think Quinnen has a case to be made. Who was the player last year? There was a Jet that got a vote for Defensive Player of the Year. And I want to say it was either Sauce or Quinnen. Maybe it was Sauce, but one of those two did get a vote for Defensive Player of the Year. So it's possible.
Yeah, might have been Quincy. I mean,
Oh, yeah, that's a good call.
that dude was, a lot of people said that he was playing at a Fred Warner level. Like he was that good. Which brings us, Dylan. Any more bold predictions?
No, that's all I had. That's all I
I'm
had. But that was a
I'm
good
predict
that was a good segue, and you almost
yeah,
you almost had it there.
yeah, nice and smooth here into the Jets Niners matchup
Hmm.
because you've got Fred Warner. I think since I mentioned Warner, I'll start with that one. One of those key matchups, Fred Warner in the middle of that defense, if and when they call on him to cover Brees Hall, because I'd be doing a lot of that if I were the 49ers. One of the most athletic, best cover backers in the NFL. Brees Hall probably going to see a ton of targets from Aaron Rodgers. I think that's a key match. That's one of my key matchups to watch.
Yeah, and I'll even say the inverse of that is also a big matchup to watch. So
Yes.
I think the 49ers have an advantage both ways.
Yes.
They have an advantage because Fred Warner is a very good linebacker, and I think he can mitigate some of the problems that Brees Hall could cause versus an average linebacker, we'll call it. But then you look on the flip side and you look at CJ Mosley versus Christian
CMC.
McCaffrey,
Yep.
and that makes me nervous. So
Yep.
my game plan theory is that they're going to man up Quincy more so than Mosley with McCaffrey. I don't know exactly how schematically that would work. Somebody else could maybe break that down, but I feel like if they can make that the matchup as opposed to Mosley on McCaffrey, that'll do better for the Jets in the long run. But yeah, it's probably going to be the bulk of the TV time is going to be the running backs and the linebackers. I don't see this being a 45 drop back type of game for Brock Purdy or Aaron Rodgers. Honestly, I think McCaffrey, Hall. Somebody put in the chat, is Allen going to get carries? Yeah, Allen's going to get carries. I would say if there's a bet out there that you can find on one of these sportsbook apps that has a single digit, like the 6.5 carries for Braylon Allen, I would consider the over. I feel like they're going to try to run the ball a ton. They're going to want to display this new gap run scheme behind this brand new offensive line. Yeah, sure, everybody's there for the Aaron Rodgers passes at the end of the day, but running the football against the 49ers is what you need to do. Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually, we talk about how teams don't really tip their hand in the preseason. My hope, and I'm hoping like hell that they've got some packages with Braylon and Brees on the field at the same time together. Force a couple of linebackers to cover them, especially Braylon. I loved him out of Wisconsin. They didn't give him a lot of opportunities to catch the football, but as we've seen and heard through camp, he's been phenomenal at it. If you have two guys who can run the way they can and be, sort of play action RPO options to throw the football to, I would feed those two guys all day long and pick your spots with Aaron Rodgers. Only have him throw it when he has to. And when he has to, that's what, to me, another big matchup, really because of, it's been one-sided, but the talk from Charvarius Ward about Garrett Wilson, the disrespect, I don't even remember what he said. Like he didn't know who he was or he wasn't any good.
Yeah.
Man, Garrett handled it like a pro, took the high road. He's right. I haven't done anything, but he wants to ram that right down his throat and beat him for a big touchdown. So hopefully, Aaron Rodgers helps that happen. That's a very good player in Ward, but it's also a very good player in Garrett Wilson. I would love to see him light it up.
Yeah, that matchup is definitely one that I think favors the Jets for sure. And Charvarius Ward is a very good player, but I do think Garrett Wilson has shown it throughout the entire month of August that he is uncoverable in these joint practices. We saw what happened on the only drive really that we saw with Rodgers and Garrett in the preseason last year. They hooked up 2, 3, maybe even 4 times and resulted in a touchdown pass that was absolutely beautiful. So I think that's going to be the matchup. Obviously, Garrett should be a little fired up, but I liked his composure and his humble approach to the whole thing. Like, he's not going to talk trash, but I have a feeling Garrett Wilson's going to catch a first down, and you're going to see that head tilt, and he's going to be jawing a little bit to Ward on the field, which is good because it's not something you want to take off the field with you. You want to just leave it all out on the field and let their beef lay where it may. But I think that Wilson does have the advantage in that matchup.
I think. Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was just going to say, I think on the other side, though, I'm looking at the corners for, the other side, what's his name? I can't pronounce it right. Yiadom, Isaac Yiadom is their other outside corner. And then they have Diamotor Lenore in the slot. So maybe a big Mike Williams game. I don't know. Maybe fire up anybody who plays in the slot. Not saying Lenore is a bad player, but I just say, like, if they move Garrett to the slot and he's on Lenore, who knows? Gibson in the slot. I feel like any non-Charvarius Ward person that is, guarding one of our receivers, that's probably an advantage for the Jets. So I think that this is a matchup that the Jets need to exploit as much as we think it's going to be a run first type of game script.
Yeah, and that reminds me, speaking of things to maybe put $1 on if you want to win $5. Um, I think, and I don't think it was an accident. I don't think it was just a coincidence that in the first 2 practices of the year, we saw the practices end with Aaron Rodgers throwing a touchdown pass to Allen Lazard. I think they're
Mm-hmm.
both good friends. They are good friends. Lazard came there to play with Rodgers. They have chemistry. They have history. Rodgers knows what Lazard went through last year. If they can line him up in the slot and get a mismatch early on, I think he would love for Lazard to score the first touchdown of the year for the Jets on offense to get fans off his back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe even an anytime touchdown. I
Yeah,
would,
yeah.
and I'm probably gonna put $1 on Allen Lazard scoring a touchdown at any point. I
That's
think,
probably solid odds. I would look it up and do it real time, but it probably wouldn't be efficient. But I'm sure it's probably like plus 850 or something for him to score. Like it's probably very good odds where that dollar could win you maybe like $7, $8, $9, $10.
yeah. So I think Lazard is one to watch it really for the season. Yeah, and
Yeah.
Minnesota Jets fan says he's a sleeper. He is. Look,
Mm-hmm.
we all got fed up with him last year. He had too many drops. It was disgusting. He does have a history of drops. A couple of years ago, he had like 11. So he's not, or that might have been over a stretch, whatever it was. Because I
Yeah.
remember looking up his numbers when they got him because compared him to Corey Davis, and he was worse than Davis. Like everyone's like, oh, we finally replaced Davis and his drops. I'm like, you got a guy who drops it more.
Mm-hmm.
So he's had issues, but he's also had some success. And I think that friendship, I think Rodgers is going to want to help out his buddy and get him some numbers and get him a score to, get fans to ease up a little bit and rebuild his confidence. So
Yeah.
I think that's a key. That's a key matchup. I wanted to jump to the next one, which is real. It's sort of like some of these matchups just go without saying. Like there's not a
Mm-hmm.
lot that needs to be said. The Jets tackles versus the Niners edge rushers. Like, what do you need to say? You
Right.
got 4 guys who can ball out.
Strength on strength.
Yeah, who can have a huge impact on this football game. Bosa and Floyd, Moses and Smith. That's gonna be huge.
Speaking of Leonard Floyd, did you see him on the Adam Schefter podcast
I did not.
where Adam Schefter was like prying questions out of Leonard Floyd about like the death threats that he received after hurting Aaron Rodgers and all this and that? And that's why I said in the chat earlier, I was like, did you even realize that like, he didn't acknowledge the Michael Carter II extension? Like he retweeted Ari Mirov and that's it.
Right.
Like he didn't put out his own tweet. And like for something as big as the highest paid at any position in the NFL, you would just think that he would type out a tweet, and hit send about it. I don't know. Maybe he just has an axe to grind with the Jets that's much, much deeper than Aaron Rodgers, but it's very weird that he was quick to say Hassan Reddick is the last player to hold out when Trent Williams and everybody signed, but he's not going to say when the Jets do something good. So,
Yeah.
but
I
Leonard
didn't catch
Floyd,
that.
good player. It was kind of he
Yeah.
even thought that the interview looked awkward from his perspective. He was like, I don't know. Like they were saying that they wanted bad things to happen to my family. I guess like it was very weird, but definitely a good player. And Yetur Gross-Matos, or I don't even know how to pronounce that. I probably butchered.
Yetur Gross-Matos, I believe.
Matos,
The Penn
yeah, there it
State
is.
kid.
I think he was banged up a couple of weeks ago, but I think he should be okay now. But yeah, that's the matchup you're watching versus our new tackles. Obviously we've seen Morgan Moses before, but Tyron Smith and him together, you're hoping for good things from the Jets' perspective, and it's a good challenge out the gates.
Yep. Last one I have that I'm really going to be focused on
Mm-hmm.
is going to be George Kittle against the Jets safeties. We've
Okay.
still not seen Clark at full speed in this scheme. Tony Adams was a nice story last year, and I think he'll be a good player. But it's not as if he's it's you don't know exactly what you're getting out of him. And I would expect to see Kittle get targeted a little bit. And on the flip side, not that it's not sauce against anyone. See, this is a tough one because I think we've all agreed. I think that Sauce needs to travel, but you
Mm-hmm.
can't really travel against San Fran because it doesn't matter. They have 2 guys that are good enough to beat you
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
That's what makes DJ Reed so important in this game. You can argue that you want Sauce on the number one guy, and he's better than Reed. With Reed being the and I don't mean this in the negative way. I mean, the number two corner, literally behind Sauce. How does he match up against Ayuk? Because I think that's where we'll see him a lot. But I think that's I didn't mention that as a matchup, but I probably should have.
Mm-hmm.
DJ Reed, whoever he's covering, and Kittle against the safeties.
Yeah, the safeties definitely worry me for the Jets. I'm not sure. Like, do they, are they comfortable and trustworthy of, Ashton Davis playing that much coverage in their first game of the season? I know Tony Adams is a darling in the organization, but we've seen very little from Tony Adams if we're being just objective. He has a very small sample size with the team, and yet he's had some flashes, but there's also been some really bad moments too. So, again, another hard challenge out the gates when you have a George Kittle type, and the tight ends have burned us in the past. I feel like so Kittle could get after it. Purdy is very good at finding Kittle over the middle. That didn't mean to rhyme, but those little hook and sit routes, he'll find him right there. Sitting in the pocket of the zone. So it'll be interesting to see just the splits of man versus zone that they decide to run against the 49ers, because I feel like they should lean a little bit more toward the man side of it. But Kittle worries me quite a bit, actually. And then my biggest matchup of the game, the one that I have circled in all color Sharpies, especially green, is
I hope you're not going to, because I have one. I'm hoping you don't steal mine, because I did remember one, but go ahead and I'll tell you.
Uh-oh. I hope not, because it's a big Jets advantage one. And this is one Mr. Quinnen Williams versus rookie Dominic Pooney.
Yep.
And I know you and I, we've probably said good things about Dominic Pooney, a couple months back on any of our draft shows, and we liked him. Senior Bowl guy, Dom C stamp of approval type of guy. But it doesn't mean anything when the lights come on Monday night. You're a rookie, and 95 is standing across from you, and he needs to feed his family too. So it's going to be interesting to see that matchup, and even him.
I don't know if you
Brendo
noticed me pick up this piece of paper a second ago and stare at it because I don't have my glasses on. I'm like, other matchup that one, and it was
that Pooney, of course.
That's what I really, that side of the line, right? McKivitz gave up, what was it? 34 pressures and 4 sacks last year at right tackle. So really that right side, because McKivitz was the one that jumped out at me because I was looking at his sacks allowed. And then as I went to the depth chart, I was like, oh, I forgot they have Pooney next to him, rookie guard against, and I always remember and Nick Man, and look, this doesn't matter which side of the ball you're on. It's about experience, right? I always remember Nick Mangold at his retirement press conference, someone asked him, is there any one player you looked forward to going against that you knew you'd have an advantage? And Mangold said, any rookie. Because I was an experienced guy. I knew what I was doing. I knew more tricks. And so that's why I look at that. And I'm like, Quinnen Williams, elite defender, going against a rookie guard who's making the move from left tackle to right guard. I feel good about that matchup.
Yeah. And I'm trying to find it because I did see like a rumor that Trent Williams might not play on Sunday. I expect him to play. Like, he could roll out of bed in 2030 and probably play a game at left tackle for somebody in the NFL.
I would be flabbergasted.
Yeah, but it brought up a bunch of like funny, like not funny, excuse me, articles and like quotes that he said in his return press conference. And this one is about him and Ricky Pearsall, the rookie wide receiver who got shot the other day. And he said that motivated him to come back and it compelled him to come back and be part of the team again. So like a cool moment of camaraderie for the 49ers, obviously getting one of their best players back. Obviously a sad moment for Ricky Pearsall, and it looks like he's going to be okay. They said he was already spotted in the weight room asking when he can come back and play. So that's good for him. But yeah, it's just I saw the rumor about Trent.
Ricky. Nobody likes to show off. Just slow down a little bit. You got shot, all right?
Jeez. So yeah, Trent Williams, I would say 99.8% he's playing on Monday, excuse me. Like I don't think there's any way he would come back and do all this and not play the opening game.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind if he didn't, but especially like I said, it's funny because I've spent a lot of time saying, the Jets will be fine with or without Hassan Reddick, and it's like, but week 1 is the one where they really would need him. Like beyond that,
Yeah.
and a lot of it too has to do with just reps. Like later in the year, if they don't have him, I probably feel better about it because guys like McDonald, well, mainly McDonald, will have had enough reps to get better as a player, which is what we're
Right.
expecting. But I like the Jets' chances in this one. Let's do a prediction for the game, and
Okay.
then we did our record prediction, but we didn't say what happens after that. So what do you think happens this week, and what happens? I'm pretty sure with our win totals, we both have the Jets in the playoffs. What happens from there? But what happens this week against San Fran?
So the San Fran prediction, I would have to say, and I'll stay consistent to what I said on Buffalo show earlier this week. 21-17. The Jets, I think, are not going to win this one. It's going to be close. I used the number 21 specifically from that Aaron Rodgers stat that you shared earlier about being 35-2 when the defense holds them to 20 or less points. I think the 49ers scored just above 20, maybe 21, 23, but 21-17 is where I have this one. And then you said, okay, so we both have them making the playoffs. I'm going to stick with 11-6 as my final regular season prediction. And I think they at least make it to the AFC Championship. Obviously, I'm hopeful that if they make it there, they can win it. And that's, the expectation. But I think that reasonably speaking, AFC Championship should be, a fair expectation for this team.
Yeah, you mentioned Peter Schrager's Aaron Rodgers MVP prediction. He also had the Jets. I think he had them going to the Super Bowl.
Did he?
He had them winning the AFC. I think he had them going to the Super Bowl.
Good for him.
John O'Sullivan says the Jets are favored to win. Is that true?
I don't think that's true.
As far as you know,
I'm gonna look it up on ESPN right now, but I don't think that's true.
We're gonna look that up in real time. That would be somewhat of a surprise.
I was gonna say, if you can find a sports book that has it, I don't even suggest taking the Jets. Giving points.
Give me some points. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. No, Jets right now spread on ESPN is +4.5. ESPN obviously not the leading sports book, but if it's 4.5 on ESPN, there's no way it's anything closer than 3.5
5-point difference.
On a DraftKings or a FanDuel. If you could find the Jets at 4.5, I would say take the Jets. Like I just said, 21-17. That's 4.5. You're winning. So I would take that.
Yeah. I'm within a point of you, Dylan. I got them 2017 Niners. That being said, I'm putting money on the Jets. I don't care because it is a winnable game. They can win this game. It's more really because I don't want to be such a blatant homer to pick them to win the toughest game of the year on the road, week 1. And part of it, though, is the fact that these guys haven't played a lot of reps together. And you're playing this defense. I think that makes it a little tricky. The Jets absolutely 100% could win this football game. I would not be surprised at all. I am taking San Fran in a close one to not be a homer. And saying San Francisco pulls out the win at home 2017, and then the Jets reel off like 5-6 wins. But that's the thing. The Jets, they lose that first game and then win a bunch. All you're going to hear about is that first game, right? I don't care if they're 4. I don't care if they're 5-1. They lost to the one good team they played.
That's in the opposite conference that they would only ever see again in the Super Bowl.
You know what? I'm changing my pick. 21-17 Jets. I can't do it.
Let's go.
This defense,
peer pressure, folks. It works.
No, I'm you know what? I'm playing over and over in my head what I've been thinking all offseason. I don't dislike Brock Purdy, but this defense is too good for Brock Purdy to light up the way he has other teams.
Yeah.
If
we get a 6-point lead, the whole thing changes.
I can't. I'm sitting here. I'm like, don't be a homer. Don't be a. I'm like, but I'm not being a homer. Like, this is what I truly believe. I think, as we talked about, Quinnen Williams should have a day. Like, he should be able to get home. Whoever's lined up next to Quinnen Williams should be able to have a day.
Yeah,
and
Javon,
with these corners,
big day for him.
With these corners, I think, And then, again, AR, everyone's going to be fired up about him being under center. 21-17 Jets. I'm changing my pick. I'm allowed. There's no rules against it.
I would just put Michael Clemens on Trent Williams' side and overload the right-hand side with like Jermaine, Quinnen, Kinlaw, those type guys. Yeah, I would definitely do that. We can win it, but I it's a believe it till I see it. or when I
Yeah,
see it type of thing. And obviously, I just want to see Rodgers get through a healthy game, fully and no problems. We're on to Tennessee. That's kind of where my mindset is. Like I've already, thought so much about that Rodgers aspect of it that it's like, okay, let's just get to Tennessee. I don't care if it's 1-0, 0-1. If we have Rodgers, it's a win in my book. It's a win in my book.
yep, absolutely. Oh, and as far as for my what happens to the Jets from the postseason,
Mhm.
I'm gonna say they go to Super Bowl.
Hell yeah.
Um, I just it it's the secondary and the pass rush. That combination should be able to keep opposing offenses in check enough that Rodgers and the offense can do enough to win the overwhelming majority of their games. We'll see. Maybe
Yep.
they'll go 0-17. What the hell do I know? But I'm saying the Jets go to the Super Bowl. I'm saying they win week 1 in a close one. I actually almost said Zerline last second field goal. They win 2017, but I want to see 3 touchdowns. So 2017 Jets pull it off. That'll wrap this one up. We got a game Monday. Well,
It's crazy, man.
not we. The Jets have a game Monday night, Tuesday morning for some of us. But I'm so fired up. So much talk. We will be live. One of us, I, Dylan, both, somebody will be live tomorrow if there is breaking
Oh,
Hassan Reddick
absolutely.
news.
Or just
All
any
right.
news that relates to the matchup. We'll be live again.
Absolutely. Have a good one, Jets fans. Jets play a football game in under a week.